하나도 있어서 지금 안 시켰어요.
아, 이 두 개는 있어요. 이게 각자 새로 만든 건가? 맞다. 내가 갖고 있는 건 다 띄워졌나요?
네, 다 됐어요.
파일이 없는 게 다 됐어요.
네, 다 됐어요. 조금 더.
네, 잠시 약 1분 후에 바로 세션을 시작하도록 하겠습니다.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session of Global Public Goods and Northeast Asia 48. My name is Hong Seung-go. I'm Vice President of Korea International Cooperation Agency, or KOIPA. First of all, let me begin by extending my gratitude to you all for taking your time out to join us this session, especially to those speakers and discussants. Before we start, I would like to give a brief background information of this session. Since early last year, KOICA and the Sejong Institute have been bi-monthly co-organizing a series of colloquiums called Foreign Policy and ODA. The purpose of the colloquiums is to review the role of ODA as a form of foreign policy and to suggest a desirable future direction. Today's session, number 22, and another session of tomorrow, number 24, combined will constitute the sixth and last of the series, and are titled Global Public Goods and Northeast Asia's ODA. In a globalized world of improved integration and interaction, the concept of global public goods has emerged as a new challenge facing the international community, and as an alternative rationally justifying the mandate of ODA. While ODA is global public goods is the subject of increased attention, contemporary international cooperation emphasizes networking by sharing and communicating their experiences, knowledge, and information. The OECD Development Assistance Committee also advocates interstate cooperation for ODA activities in order to maximize aid effectiveness and efficiency. In Northeast Asia, however, mutual cooperation has been inconspicuous. This is why COICA and the Sejong Institute co-organized this colloquium, of which today's session is the first half. The second half will take place tomorrow morning. From the perspective of ODA as global public goods, the two sessions aim to comprehend what kind of ODA policies China, Japan, and Korea have pursued or are to pursue, and how those policies contribute to improving global public goods. Based on the public mutual understanding of respective policies and discussion, at the end of both sessions, we hope to identify a possibility for regional ODA cooperation among China, Japan, and Korea. I'm sure that this will be a valuable opportunity to take the next step in developing mutual understanding and ODA cooperation among three Northeast Asian countries. Ladies and gentlemen, now we open our first session. There will be two presentations for this session. Panel discussions will follow each presentation. And after two presentations and panel discussions, we will have question and answer open to the audience. Let me explain about time allocation. We are given altogether 80 minutes for this session. I'm going to allocate 30 minutes for each presentation, including panel discussion. At the end of two presentations and discussions, we will have the floor open to the audience for questions and answers. I hope that will be about 15 minutes. Let me move on to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Anna Park, Director General for Development Cooperation in Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. She is also co-chair of G20 Development Working Group. Previously, she was Minister Counselor at the mission of the Republic of Korea to the United Nations and Political Counselor at the Korean Embassy in China. The title of her presentation is Korean ODA Policies and Global Governance. Now you have the floor.
Let me check the PowerPoint here. Now it's available. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this very important session on ODA Development Cooperation. As Ambassador Hong mentioned, my presentation will focus on Korea's ODA policy and the global governance. My presentation will cover 4 parts. The first one is changing global development landscape. Then the second part is about Korea's contribution to global governance. And the third part is Korea's ODA policy. And the last part will be Korea's foreign policy and ODA. With respect to changing global development landscape, one of the biggest change in these days is the actors. In the area of development cooperation, earlier Western countries, their contribution was very much dominant. But now we see many new actors like developing economies like China, Brazil, India, and South Africa. They are playing more role. The private sector also, their contribution is getting bigger and bigger. You see this this screen shows that the statistics of last year. $130 billion contributed by DOC members. Private sector is $60 billion, and South-South cooperation providers, emerging economies, they are also making increasing contribution to development cooperation. It's a very important changing element in development landscape. Then I'd like to touch upon global development architecture. There are actually 3 major processes. The first one, everyone is very familiar with the UN process. You are focusing on social development. UN set 4 Millennium Development Goals in the year 2011, and the target year is now approaching. In 3 years, we have to figure out post-MDG framework. Second process is focusing on aid quality, so how to use aid in a more effective way. This process started from Rome, high-level forum on aid effectiveness. The second meeting was held in Paris, a third one at Accra, and the last HLF high-level forum was held in Korea last year, last November, and that was actually the end of this aid effectiveness journey. I will go into detail about this process later. And the third process is G20 development process. It's focusing on more growth. Then let me talk about the Korea's contribution to this global governance, to this architecture. I just mentioned that there are 3 major processes. When MDG or MDG goals was set, Korea didn't play very much prominent role at that time, but for the second initiative, G20 development agenda, Korea played a very significant role. Actually, when we had the Seoul G20 summit in the year 2010, Korea introduced the development as a key G20 agenda. Before that, G20 didn't deal with development cooperation, and Korea believed that without dealing with development issues of developing countries, we cannot successfully address global economy governance. G20 process is focusing on addressing bottlenecks of growth, not providing aid to developing countries. It's more policy oriented. In the G20 process, developing countries are not just a recipient of any assistance, but developing countries are vital partner for recovery of global economy. And Korea's recent contribution to global governance was Busan High Level Forum 4. As I said, it was the last journey of aid effectiveness process, and that is also the beginning of a new journey of development effectiveness. So it tried to shift paradigm from aid effectiveness to development effectiveness to make development happen. And this Busan process is also very much important because it's forming a new architecture, which is a genuinely global partnership, including all stakeholders like emerging economies, private sectors, parliamentarians, local government, and civil society. The Busan Global Partnership will formally launch actually end of this month. So let's see Korea's ODA policy. This screen shows how transformed ourselves from recipient to OECD DAC donor. We started to receive foreign aid from 1945. Then we formally graduated from the recipient list in the year 1999. Before graduating from recipient list, we started to provide development cooperation from 1987 by establishing EDCF, Concessional Loan Program. Then KOICA was established in 1991 to provide grants to other developing countries. Then we formally graduated from recipient country list. Then 2010 we became OECD DAC member. Korea's transformation from recipient to donor actually gives us unique stance and strengths in development cooperation because our development experience is rather recent, and we know hunger and poverty and all the problems and challenges other developing countries are facing. So and also we have the skills and technologies which can be applied to other developing countries. These are the strengths and the comparative advantage we have. So actually, year of 2010 was a turning point for Korea. Korea joined OECD DAC in 2010. Then we established an overarching legal basis so that we acted Framework Act on international development cooperation. Then we developed a comprehensive policy framework in the same year. Let's look at the Korea's aid. How much? Last year, the total volume was 1.4 billion. It's still modest, but the trend is very much promising. It's increasing. In year 2009, it was 0.1% of our GNI. In 2010, 0.12. In 2011, 0.13. Who are participating in development cooperation? Quite many organizations, over 30 government ministries and agencies are participating in the provision of the development cooperation. And among them, COICA and the EDCF, they are playing the major role. Then the major portion of our development cooperation goes to Asia and Africa. Over 70% of our development cooperation goes to these areas. And our development cooperation is actually a mix of aid delivery instrument, both grants and soft loans. Since the time given to me is short than expected, I will skip some part of my PowerPoint presentation, but the material is available in the room, so you can have a look at those materials for your reference. As I said, we are equipped with a legal frame and policy frame. Now the challenge we are facing, or the major task we have to accomplish, is to scale up our ODA. And at the same time, we have to improve the quality of the ODA. So how to improve? Well, we have to enhance our aid effectiveness, and we have to improve our domestic implementation system. Then we have to strengthen policy coherence. The last part of my presentation is about the Korea's foreign policy and ODA. This picture shows that, this diagram actually shows that the core values of Korea's foreign policy. The first core value is giving priority to national interest. The second one, contributing to mankind. Third one, serving the public. The last one, aiming to be best. So our ODA policy actually is directly related to our second core value of foreign policy. Then how we are executing our ODA to contribute to our core value of contribution to mankind. Our approach is that based on our unique stand and strengths, we should play an active role in addressing global challenging issues, poverty reduction and sustainable development. And the second approach is that our ODA, we regard it not just assistance to other developing countries, but it's an investment for our shared future. And the last approach is partnering with developing countries and the international community. Through development cooperation, we try to achieve all objectives of our diplomacy. Meaning, through pursuing global value, which is the reduction of poverty and stimulating economic growth and social development, we are supposed to serve to contribution diplomacy. Then, through upgrading national prestige, we are supposed to serve public diplomacy. Then third, through strengthening partnership with developing countries, we are also supposed to serve diplomacy for developing countries. Then the lastly, by ensuring public support and through communication with people, we are supposed to serve diplomacy with people. We have some strategies to consolidate ODA in our foreign policy framework. in 3 levels, at 3 levels, domestic, field, and international community. First, at the domestic level, we are trying to play a more active role in ODA policy making and coordination in domestic, which includes our efforts for policy coherence for development and developing country partnership strategy on each partner country and in linkage between grants and concessional loans. So through these efforts, we are trying to provide a more unified and strategic policy platform across government. At the field level, we are delegating more authorities and accountability to the heads of foreign missions. As CEO of Korea's ODA, to maximize ODA's, our ODA resources in concerted manner. Our field offices, mainly our embassies, they play a very key role in consultation with partner country government and coordination with other aid agencies. And lastly, at international level, we are trying to work more closely with other players. So it includes our active participation of building better aid architecture and global governance. Then we also try to participate in aid harmonization efforts. Through these efforts, we are supposed to play a proactive role, contributing to building global development partnership. Well, finally, in sum, we believe that when ODA works within the foreign policy framework, we can make better use of it, and we can contribute to mankind. We can achieve not only more effective development cooperation, but also we can achieve overall objectives of diplomacy through development cooperation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your lucid presentation, Ms. Emma Park. Now let's move on to panel discussion on our first presentation. For the discussion, we will invite 2 panelists, and each panelist will discuss about 5 minutes to share their opinion with us. I would like to introduce our discussants, Mr. Karasawa Masayaki of JICA, and Professor Kim Ki-jung of Yonsei University. Mr. Karasawa is the head of the Office for Global Issue and Development Partnership at JICA, and he also served as the head of the Office for Climate Change at JICA. Professor Kim Ki-jung is currently Professor of Political Science at Yonsei University in Korea. He graduated from the University of Connecticut with a PhD. Now, Mr. Karasawa, would you please begin your discussion?
Thanks, Chair. And I express my sincere thanks to the organizer. This valuable to express our views on the ODA. And I also would like to appreciate your valuable input, Madam Park. I'm impressed by Madam Park's explanation on the policy coherence of your government. The platform, the establishment of the platform, in other words, the establishment of the strong focal point. I think that is an indispensable effort for the present environment of the ODA. Under the rapid urbanizations, the multipolar growth brings multipolar development cooperation, various networks of the cooperation. Many development agenda have the characteristics as new, global, and multi-sectoral and common challenges and also response measures both for developed and developing countries. Even developed countries are struggling for those challenges, including climate change, income disparities, and the aging society, and so on. Traditional donors, the past experience to be useful for some challenges, however, may not be for many. Then donors are expected to strengthen their analytical capacity and flexibly collaborate with the domestic and the foreign private sectors, research institutions, and emerging donors to provide the best innovative mix of the policy actions. For that, the donor expect to have an effective, strong focal point to coordinate, leverage domestic resources, and expand partnership with external actors and mobilize their resources. So I fully agreed on the Madam Park's explanation for the establishment of the strong focal point, the focal platform. And at the initial explanation, the chair mentioned about the lack of the networks of cooperation in the Northeast. However, we can say after 1998 Asian crisis, the regional cooperation gradually progressed, and we have some system for the cooperation now. However, there are various areas of cooperation: climate change, the local government alliance. There are various networks. Now it may be necessary to consolidate the result of discussion. So it may be necessary to establish kind of apex network of networks. In that sense, the networks of the focal points, focal groups, maybe that is a good idea. Of course, China, Korea, Japan, those countries are very important to consist of those networks. Those countries, they are getting a step ahead of others for struggling. Our experience lessons are cooperation to elaborate this mix of solutions should be significant for others. Example that the aging society, climate change, we are facing those difficulties ahead of other countries in Asia. So such cooperation, cooperative relation can be workable, and it should be workable, and also expect to be workable for the new challenges in the future as well. But I must say for those framework, that should be complemented by the bilateral relation, trust building process, accumulation of such experience. Otherwise, we cannot expect constructive discussion among the many members, including those 3 members. Global governance like G20, we appreciate much for those efforts. We support very much fully. However, sometimes it's difficult to get the actual policy actions, agreed actions beyond political advocacy, sharing the information, sharing difficulties. The different background of those members, sometimes it's difficult to have a constructive discussion. Then the limited members with the similar backgrounds, similar difficulties, sometimes it's more workable to get the actual solutions, workable solutions. So the limited members, regional arrangement should complement with the global governance system. Thanks. That's my point.
Thank you very much. Now, may I invite Professor Kim Ki-jung to
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Ki-jung Kim from Yonsei University. I'm very honored to be part of this wonderful conference seminar organized by Sejong. Well, Madame Wagner's presentation is about Korean ODA policies and global governance. I think that simply put, her presentation is very informative. Korean foreign policy in general, and it is very educational also. So, ODA and increasing interest about ODA. South Korean policy is not exceptional. We are following the changing trend toward the policy in the 21st century. But it is very important to say that the ODA many countries' cooperation about how to increase and how to practice in a cooperative way about ODA. It is, I think, the increasing interest about ODA seems to me that it is a remarkable change. It is a new way of searching for a path toward coexistence beyond competition. Competition was the core principle of the so-called Western international. We can see the multilateral or the collaborative approach to solve the problem of ecology, environmental issues, energies, human rights, and also the economic cooperation between the developing countries and the developed countries. So the bottom line of the assumption is that multilateral approach and the collaborative approach to global issues is necessary. That means the global issue, this kind of global issues cannot be solved only on. It will never be solved by the competitions. So I think the ODA is a very good example. It symbolizes the changing perception about the world politics. But still, I think that we are experiencing kind of transitional period from competition to coexistence efforts of the world politics, because still many countries are preoccupied with the ODA, linked with the national interest, unit-centered perception of national interest. The South Korean ODA policy, I think, as Madam Park well succinctly explained well about the current situation and the future goals about the South Korean ODA policy. She also mentioned that still that Korea. It is a very successful story. It's maybe Korea is the first country from recipient to donor country, but still, in terms of the total amount of ODA, still the ODA per GNI is she mentioned it was only 0.12%, and I know that it should be increased by 0.25 by 2015. And she also mentioned that maybe it is related to the South Koreans' own model of the ODA policy, probably reaching between the developing countries and the developing countries. But still, we can see some problems in the South Korean ODA policy. That the first one is that. We need to increase the proportion of the grant. The DAC average is the proportion of the grant is the DAC average is 12.6%, but in Korea is still 36.3%. That means that still, Korea's ODA policy it is a loan type. Another problem that we can see is that we have too many or too complicated, diversified organizations about maybe diversified agencies. COICA is the one, EXIMbank is another one, Ministry of Finance and Strategy, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of Education and Technology, all these kind of agencies. So maybe we are worried in some cases that maybe we could imagine there's some bureaucratic conflict, bureaucratic competitions in the field. So lastly, that means that maybe if we are going to put ODA policy in the center of the South Korean foreign policy, in the center of South Korea's public diplomacy, probably we need to set up, efficient way of controlling power. Not only controlling power, but controlling principles and controlling values to give some influence, controlling behaviors of the organizations of South Korea. Okay, maybe I'll stop now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the discussion. Now, may I invite Ms. Park to come back for some comments? I just no questions, so I answers to the discussion for some comments.
Well, thank you very much for your very insightful comments on my presentation. With respect to Mr. Masayuki's comments, I fully agree that it is very important to have innovative policy mix, taking advantages of different stakeholders. That's how we initiated the Busan Global Partnership. Earlier, foreign aid or development cooperation were very much dominated by just the two players. One is developed countries, so-called OECD members, and recipient countries. So we missed other actors' significant contribution, including private sectors, as you just mentioned. That's how we try to form a new architecture. But since new architecture is going to launch this year, we hope that under this new architecture, all stakeholders can closely work together and create a synergy. And our approach will be more innovative to make development actually happen for all countries. And I appreciate your comment on that. Professor Ki-Jun Park rightly pointed out that Korea's ODA volume is still very much modest, and we set the target to 0.25 of GNI by 2015. If we achieve this target, still we are not at the we are not going to reach the average of OECD down members. OECD down members average is 0.36% of GNI. So there is long way to go. And first, we have to achieve this target first. Then we can catch up with others. But this target is still very much challenging. You mentioned that our grant portion is relatively small, and that's true. The figure we have is grant half and concession loan half. It's half and half. It's very much high compared to other countries. So we are going to make more efforts to increase our grant type ODA. With respect to diversified agencies, it's a somewhat delicate question for us to address because we believe that, as I mentioned, for development cooperation, ODA is fully integrated in foreign policy, then it is the best way to achieve the objectives of ODA and to maximize the effectiveness of ODA while contributing to diplomatic objectives in long term. But then different agencies may have different opinions, so let me stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Wang Yihan, professor at China Agricultural University, to make our second presentation on China's foreign aid, historical evolution, architecture, and charities. With a doctoral degree in development studies of Wageningen University, Professor Wang has for many years focused research work on rural and agricultural development in China. She has participated in the China DAG Group Roundtable on mutual learning and information sharing in agriculture and food security. Please.
So, thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad and honored to have the opportunity to give you a presentation today. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizer of this meeting for inviting me to be here. This is my first time to be in Jeju. I enjoy my time here very much, so thank you. So the title of my presentation is China's Foreign Aid, Historical Evolution, Architecture, and Challenges. So the main contents fall in three parts. One is the historical evolution of China's foreign aid policy. And the second one is China's aid architecture and modalities. And the third one, experiences and challenges. Actually, as everybody here knows that China has gained great international attention with the increasing role China has played in the global economy. In fact, China almost started its foreign aid to other developing countries at the same time with the West. So regarding the historical evolution of China's foreign aid, or regarding the stage of the aid policy, different researchers have different classification. And our study divides China's foreign aid into three phases. Based on the change of China's domestic and international development agenda. So the first stage, we call it an initial stage. And the second one is adjustment stage. And the third one is a new stage. So for the initial stage, it started in year 1950 and ended by the end of 1970s. So during this stage, China was dominated by the planned economy and the left-wing development paradigm. So during this period, China's foreign aid was characterized as a kind of political and social gift to expand the socialist ideology, and it focusing on political and social reciprocity. So on the one hand, it served the purpose to gain the international support so as to solidify its own independence. And on the other hand, it aimed to help those countries, those recipient countries, to develop their economy, to strengthen their political independence. So from this table, we know that from 1950 to 1978, China's foreign aid characterized both in terms of the total amount and its proportion in GNP and the financial expenditure. So until the early 1970s, the recipient of China's foreign aid came up to 32 countries, which expanded from Asia, from East Europe and Africa to Latin America. And the type changed from mainly in kind and cash to the lending of wholesale equipment assistance and technical assistance. Also, during this period, China helped 20 countries to build up more than 300 wholesale projects. So this box one actually just shows some examples of projects China has supported during this period. So on until the end of 1970s, China had not formed its own aid industry, nor had it established its own aid concepts and framework to provide a kind of modern aid with objective to reform its own social and economic institutions. And it did not set any clear conditions with its aid, nor did it have any demands on economic gains in this stage. Therefore, China did not cause serious conflicts economically or politically in the recipient countries, and also it had gained great international political capital and good reputations. So since 1978, China's foreign aid came to a new stage. It's called, we call it a kind of adjustment stage. So from 1978, China began its domestic reform and economic structure, greatly reduced its ideology persuasion in the international arena. And China began to adjust its foreign aid policy towards better serving its domestic economic development. Total amount, proportion of duties, financial expenditure were lower than the previous period. And three major changes were made to implement these policies. The first one is that Chinese business companies and partner countries' business groups were encouraged to take over China's foreign aid project as joint venture business. And second is that a special fund using that return loan, from those developing countries, to set up to support these joint venture projects companies in 1993. And it also has a kind of middle and long-term policy ODA loan program by China Import-Export Bank in 1995. So this box 2 actually just showed a very typical case of that joint venture company which transformed from a government supported aid project in Mali. It's a Mali Sugar Corporation Limited. It's quite a successful case. Actually, in the 1960s, China helped Mali to develop its sugar factory and the sugarcane farm. And they also provide all kind of equipment, infrastructure, and in the farm and the factory. And but once the factory was running, it was managed by the Malians. And but the factory and the farm were almost went bankrupt by 1980. Just by local people. So in 1981, both China and Mali agreed to jointly management of this factory and the farm. So, China's Light Industry Corporation shares 60% and the local Mali government shares 40%. Now this company has become the third largest taxpayer in the country and is contributed almost 1/50 of the total government revenue of Mali. So it's quite a successful case. Since year 2000, China's foreign aid came to a new stage towards multiple development goals. After entering the new century, China's foreign aid volume rapidly increased. This increase was largely due to the clearly adjusted aid policy during the 1980s and the 1990s, also due to the rise of China in the global system. So this has made an increasing practical demand on raw materials and associated enhanced attention on economic benefits. And on the political aspect, China needed to gain support from developing countries, particularly from African countries. China needs votes in the international organizations. And China is quite a faster growth country. China also bears obligations of foreign aid as a big country to fulfill expectations set by the international community. And also, China has made remarkable achievements in its opening reform and economic adjustment. So those developing countries have shown quite great interest in China's experiences through technical assistance. China's aid program has been much expanded into multiple modalities and a wider scope of areas. So during this stage, since 2000, China's aid program has expanded to the fields of agriculture, infrastructure, education, healthcare, human resources, and clean energy. So this box 3 shows a case for the new form of technical assistance program, which is China Sierra Leone project. It's part of FAO special program for food security. I will not explain it in detail. You have that in the paper. So, like the historical evolution of the China's aid policy, China's aid architecture and modalities also have gone through very significant changes during this over these 60 years. So this table just shows the aid architecture of China has changed over these years from 1950s to 60s, 80s, and 2000. So since 2003, we can see that it's mainly administrated by the Ministry of Commerce. So it's managed by Foreign Aid Department and implemented by the International Economic Cooperation Affairs Bureau. So actually, the decision making, the aid policy and decision making rights are still in the hands of central government. So the State Council oversees the coordinating mechanism among the ministries, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Finance, and other ministries which implement those special sector projects. And the Ministry of Commerce works on behalf of the State Council and proposes foreign aid policies, regulations, overall plans, and annual plans, and under which it has International Economic Cooperation Affairs Bureau is responsible for wholesale project and technical cooperation. Foreign Aid Department is in charge of the foreign aid policies, planning and programming, and some other sectors are also involved, but not that as much as what Korea did. So China's foreign aid is operated through bilateral and multilateral channels. It's a bilateral aid program is mainly developed by the request of recipients countries, and multilateral aid programs are mainly contributed to multilateral institutions such as UN organizations. So that there are 3 main modalities of China's aid. The first one is the complete projects, which is financed by grant and favorable loans, which takes about 30% of the total amount of China's aid. And second one is providing equipment and materials like machinery, medical equipment, food, medical products, and so on and so forth. And the third one is technical assistance program. So it's long-term engagement with those developing countries. China has gained a lot of experiences of its aid. So over the last 60 years, China's foreign aid has expanded from a small number of countries in the 1950s to almost 160 countries. And also they provide support to more than 30 international and regional organizations. And although it has adopted a kind of non-political conditions approach, China has also played a significant role in international cooperation. Its foreign aid concentrates on the poor and low-income countries. Its aid distribution to those countries covers 2/3 of China's total aid allocation, and 80% of the aid goes to Africa and Asia. And its aid program largely concentrates on areas which are associated with economic development and livelihood of the recipient countries, and also actively works with the international development community to cope with global challenges such as poverty and climate change. So this table shows the overall positive reaction of recipient countries in areas of infrastructure construction, agriculture development projects, private investment, capacity building, and health and medical services. So China, the experience that China has got as follows, that its aid program insists equal partnership, and support is provided only when there is demand from recipient countries. And secondly, its aid program strongly focuses on development effectiveness. Most of its aid programs are linked with growth perspectives. For instance, its large number of economic infrastructure development in those recipient countries. And thirdly, its unconditional aid principle provides a non-interference environment for other developing countries to develop their domestic development agenda. So just like the other side of the coin, these experiences China got also became a kind of challenges China's aid is facing with. So China's non-interference foreign aid policy confronts with the good governance-centered Western aid policy. So this has affected China's bilateral relations with its major economic and trade partners. So there's a need actually for China and those Western donors to develop a kind of inclusive framework to enable China and other donors to cooperate in a harmonious manner. And secondly, China's foreign aid is managed by the Foreign Aid Department and other agencies. Efficiency and effectiveness are significantly constrained by insufficient capacity. And this insufficient capacity will result in lacking of an effective evaluation system. And so far, there's almost no evaluation institution or special institution to undertake monitoring and evaluation. And also it results in poor transparency and lack of timely information, which cause suspicions from international community, and also have some problems in by the support and understanding by the domestic public. And also, so far there's no systematic study on China's foreign aid. And its selection of the project is mainly based on the request of recipient countries. This has made China's aid passive and temporary in nature. And thirdly, both the non-reimbursable assistance and economic and technical cooperation are faced with the issue of effective integration with poverty reduction targets in African countries. And actually, China has accumulated a lot of experiences in this aspect. So there is a need for China to explore how to apply China's experiences into this aspect. And fourthly, China's aid mainly focuses on equipment and infrastructure construction. And this caused a further issue of maintenance, operation, mechanism issue, and sustainable issue, and so on and so forth. And this actually, for those Western donors, they have their long-term experience on this. And China needs to learn lessons from them. Lastly, China is faced with environmental concerns as economic assistance and joint venture cooperation increase. So there is a need for rigid environmental assessment for Chinese government. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your enlightening presentation for this one. Now I would like to invite two panelists for discussion on this second presentation. Professor Choi Jin-woo of Hanyang University and Dr. Yoo Hong-jo, legislative researcher at the Korean National Assembly. Professor Choi Jin-woo is Professor of Political Science at Hanyang University. She was formerly president of the Korean Association of Contemporary European Studies and the Director General of the Korean Association of Political Science. Dr. Yoo Hong-jo is a legislative researcher of Foreign Affairs and National Security team at the National Assembly Research Service. He also works as an adjunct professor in the Graduate School of International Service at Sookmyung Women's University. Professor Choi, start. We are actually running out of time, so would you kindly make your discussion very short?
So, for the sake of efficient use of time, I'll speak in Korean because I can say more in Korean than in the English in the given time. 페이퍼 아주 잘 읽었습니다. 아주 중국의 해외 원조의 역사와 동기 그리고 구조를 잘 요약해준 페이퍼였습니다. 덕분에 아주 많은 공부가 돼서 그 점에 대해서 감사드립니다. 제가 질문하고 싶은 게 굉장히 많은데요. 그 중에 몇 가지만 추려서 하도록 하겠습니다. 이 페이퍼에서 제가 좀 흥미롭게 생각했던 것 중에 하나는 사실 이 페이퍼가 언급을 하지 않은 것 때문에 그런 건데 그게 뭐냐 하면은 이 페이퍼에서는 우리가 국제개발협력을 이야기할 때 많이 이야기하는 MDG에 대한 언급이 전혀 없습니다. 그리고 또 한 가지 흥미로운 것은 그 ODA라는 표현이 전혀 나오지 않고 있습니다. 그래서 사실은 그 이유를 좀 물어보고 싶은데 제 짐작은 혹시 그 MDG라고 하는 그런 어떤 원칙 또는 목표 이런 것들이 서구적 가치에서 비롯된 것이기 때문에 중국이 그 MDG를 수용 또는 사용하는 것을 좀 꺼리고 있는 것인지, 그리고 ODA라고 하는 용어도 또 이제 마찬가지이고요. 그리고 관련해서 또 한 가지 여쭤보고 싶은 것은 제가 좀 다른 문헌들을 조사해 본 바에 의하면 중국의 해외 원조 관련 통계는 일반적인 글로벌 노움하고는 상당히 다른 것으로 알고 있습니다. 예컨대 부채 탕감, 데트 릴리프 같은 건 일반적으로 ODA에 포함이 되고 있는데 중국 그 해외 원조 통계는 잡히지 않고 있고요. 그리고 지방 정부가 운영하는 그 공기업이 제공하는 그 해외 원조도 또 잘 잡히지 않고 있습니다. 그래서 그런 것들을 다 포함시키면 중국의 ODA 규모가 훨씬 더 큰 걸로 나타날 수가 있고, 그런 통계치가 발표가 된다면 그거는 중국의 소프트 파워에 상당히 긍정적인 요인으로 작용할 수 있을 것 같은데 왜 그런 어떤 통계에 있어서의 국제적 규범을 따르지 않고 다른 방법을 사용하시는지 그걸 좀 여쭤보고 싶습니다. 그리고 또 한 가지 시간이 주어진다면 더 여쭤보고 싶은 게 아까 중국이 지금 그 해외 원조를 하는 것이 양자간 원조도 하고 있고 다자간 원조도 하고 있다라고 이제 말씀하셨는데 과연 다자간 원조의 비중이 얼마나 되는지 그리고 그게 지금 늘어나고 있는 추세인지 그걸 좀 알고 싶습니다. 왜냐하면은 제가 알기로는 지금 국제사회에서 전반적인 트렌드는 다자간 원조를 늘리는 방향으로 가는 걸로 알고 있는데 과연 그런 그 국제 추세에 중국이 어떻게 지금 반응을 하고 있는지 그것도 궁금하고요. 아직 시간이 더 있나요? 없습니다. 예, 그럼 여기서 마치겠습니다.
Now, may I invite Dr. Yu Hong-jo for discussion.
Okay. First of all, thank you for being here, and I appreciate 고이카 and 세종 too. 앞에 분이 한글로 하셔서 저도 한국어로 하겠습니다. 같이 마치겠습니다. 일단은 그 프로페서 왕 그 프레젠터를 통해서 많이 배웠습니다. 중국의 foreign aid policy에 대해서. 실제로 이미 프레젠터도 말씀하셨지만 사실 중국 foreign aid에 대한 정보가 그렇게 많이 드러나 있지는 않습니다. 그래서 체계적으로 연구하기도 어렵고 DAC 회원국들에 대한 ODA 펄러스에 대한 분석을 하는 방식으로 중국의 foreign aid를 펄러스를 분석하기 상당히 어렵습니다. 그래서 저도 이제 그걸 연구하기 위해서 자료를 찾았지만 어렵기 때문에 그런 점들은 아마 이미도 이미 그래서도 멘션했었던 것 같은데 그런 점에서는 상당히 오늘 프레젠테이션을 통해서 많이 배웠던 것 같습니다. 몇 가지 그냥 질문을 좀 드리겠습니다. 앞에서도 그 말씀을 하셨는데요. 사실 그 foreign aid하고 ODA하고는 약간 차이가 있습니다. 때로는 뭐 foreign aid하고 ODA는 이제 같이 혼용해서 사용을 하기도 하는데요. 예를 들면 미국 같은 경우는 foreign aid 그러면 economic aid하고 military aid 그래서 두 개로 나뉘기도 하고요. 그리고 ODA라고 했을 때는 거기에 대한 크리테리아가 있습니다. 근데 지금 프레젠터가 사용하는 foreign aid도 제가 보건 데는 앞에서도 질문 똑같이 하셨는데 약간 지금 우리가 이해하고 있는 ODA하고 다른 맥락에서 아마 정의를 내리고 중국 정부에서도 아마 그렇게 이해를 하고 진행하고 있는 걸로 파악이 됩니다. 그렇기 때문에 우리가 일반적으로 이해하고 있는 ODA하고 지금 프레젠터, 그러니까 중국 정부에서 얘기하거나 지금 프레젠터가 얘기하시는 foreign aid하고 어떤 차이가 있어서 그렇게 쓰는 건지 어떤 맥락이 있는 건지가 좀 궁금하고요. 거기에 대해서 좀 설명을 좀 해주시면 좋겠고요. 그리고 두 번째로는 지금 여기 프레젠터 그 발표하신 것 중에 보면 그 foreign aid를 제공할 때 언제 주로 하냐면 그 수원국으로 이렇게 요구가 있을 경우에 한다라고 되어 있어요. 그 문장본 8페이지 보면 Support is provided only when there are demand from recipient countries. 이렇게 되어 있거든요. 그리고 나름대로 뭔가 좀 다른 이게 수원국의 필요를 중국이 판단해서 준다는 얘기인지 아니면 수원국이 요구할 경우에 그 국가에 대해서만 준다는 얘기인지 사실 애매모호하게 처리되어 있어서 뒤에도 이제 그런 맥락들이 좀 많이 나와요. 그게 좀 궁금하고요. 세 번째는 지금 8페이지도 같은 맥락인데 donor recipient mother를 갖다가 리젝트하신다고 했어요. 그리고 나서 그 China의 foreign aid는 3type이라고 말씀을 하셨거든요. 이게 어떤 맥락에서 얘기하는 건지 정확히 설명을 좀 해주셔야 될 것 같아요. 왜냐하면 별 차이 없기도 한데 또 그걸 굳이 언급하시는 거 보면 어떤 맥락 중국에 특별한 어떤 고려가 있는 것 같고요. 또 하나는 그런 면에서 좀 궁금한 것은 그 론하고 그랜트에 대한 정보가 전혀 없기 때문에 혹시 아시면 중국의 론하고 그랜트 비율이 어떻게 되는지 좀 궁금합니다. 그리고 마지막 두 가지만 더 말씀드리고 빨리 끝내겠습니다. 좀 끝내야 될 것 같아가지고
저기 답할 시간이 없어요.
예, 하나만
질문해도 답을 할 시간이 없어요.
그래요?
예, 여기서 좀.
그 하나만 코멘트하고 끝내겠습니다. 이건 질문 아니고요. 일단은 그 중국에서 발표자가 얘기했듯이 현재 DAC 회원국 중심으로 있는 그 글로벌 레벨의 어떤 할모니어스한 프레임워크에 대해서 중국도 펀드를 쓰는 프레임워크에 대한 제기를 하신 것은 저도 동의하는데 제가 보건된 것이 G20가 될지 아까 언급하셨지만 APEC이라든가 이런 형태로 다양하게 될 수 있을 것 같아요. 그래서 그거는 앞으로도 계속 연구 대상이고 나름대로 DAC 중심으로 되어 있는 ODA 시스템에 대한 어떤 극복할 수 있는 방안이기 때문에 아마 이건 점차적으로 중국 측에서도 좀 연구해서 국제사회에 제기할 수 있는 그런 것이 있었으면 좋겠습니다. 이 정도로 마치겠습니다.
We have less than 10 minutes left for this session, so I will invite Professor Wang to pick up just a few of the questions because she does not have to answer all questions. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Your questions may be because of the language problem because maybe I can say presentation about ODA and MGD and some others. Actually, you know, for China, it's, for many years, its philosophy, history, we have our independent or quite separate discourse of language used in many areas like humanities or the economic areas. So for this MGD and ODA came from the West. Although China do not use this as often as what the Western donors or other countries did, but what we have done are not as different as what the Western or the other donors did, apart from the non-prerequisite China didn't really require from those resident countries. For example, in the for this MGD, for these goals, what contribution China has made by its foreign aid programs, it has contributed a lot to meet. It has already, tried to meet the needs of these MGD goals like poverty reduction and equality of people, something like that. Although it did not really use this term, so it just has different language, the discourse used. And for the figures or data, all the data can be referred to the data issued by the China's foreign aid white paper. So you can, I'm not in the position to publish any figures which are not really included in that white paper. So you can look at that point. And for the to talk about the types of the so you talk about and Professor Yu Wengzheng asked about me to elaborate more about the modalities of China's foreign aid. So the first one is about complete projects. Let's just different modalities. This one is mainly about the goods or infrastructure development for those for meeting the basic needs of the poor people in the different countries. And the second one is different type. The type is different. For the public use, like some. And the third one is are those projects which can make profit, like industrial projects and programs, which is mainly referred to this area. So that's very different. Also, we have some other kind of modalities like sending like team, or we have volunteers in the Western countries, and also train some officials from other countries. So several modalities.
Thank you. Now we have less than 5 minutes left. At this time, I would like to open the floor for questions. As we don't have enough time for questions, how that
Just one comment for the discussion on the long-term goal. We understand that we need to increase the grant proportion that is favorable for the developing countries. And also we have a negative memory of the debt cancellation for the African countries. That time it was indispensable to keep a fiscal space for them to invest for the growth. However, I would like to insist the necessity of the diversification of modalities. The loan assistance, that is a bridge between the pure grant and the commercial money. The developing countries need to graduate from the ODA, and then they start to procure, mobilize a fund from money. How we promote such graduation, the modality of the diversification of the modality, including loan, will be indispensable. It's not necessarily only loan, maybe guarantee scheme, semi-commercial scheme will be necessary for the graduation. So, important thing is the rigid criteria for the application. If recipient country's economy is not good to receive the loan, then we should apply grant. But seeing the improvement of the economic situation, we need to change the condition of our finance cooperation, and then make it close to the commercial scheme. That is our consideration. So the extreme black and white discussion is a bit misleading. I just would like to mention.
Okay, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to close this session. Before I conclude, my apologies to the audience because I couldn't quite encourage the audience to come forward with comments and questions due to the time limit. I express my deepest appreciation for all of your commitment, efforts, and contribution. I hope you have all enjoyed this session. This session is followed by another one that is coming tomorrow morning. So I hope I will see you, all of you, tomorrow morning there. And there we will have a wrap up. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow morning.
네, 잠깐 행사 진행 관련해서 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 우리 학생 모델 참가자는요, 7시에 저희 만찬이 있습니다. 그래서 장소가 협조한 관계로 다른 곳 식사 장소가 호텔 내부에 있는 다른 곳 식사 장소가 있으니까 저희 항상 조교들이 안내를 해주실 거고요. 다른 저희 역할 참가자들, 교수님들, 모델들 부분 많은 저희가 개인적으로 말씀드리기 때문에 저녁 7시에 만찬장에서 뵙도록 하겠고요. 7시에 그 만찬장에서 뵐 때 저희 테이블이 준비가 되어 있을 겁니다. 저나 저희 조교들이 안내를 해드리도록 하겠습니다. 7시에 뵙도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그리고 저희 학상 참가단 그 공지사항이 있으니까요. 잠시만 그 자리에 나와주시면 감사하겠습니다.
원장님 먼저 발표하시고요. 그 다음에 뭐 뉴 동영상 한번더 확인 좀 해주세요. 한번 안 들어가도 될까요?
앞에 건가 본데.
동영상 여기 아니에요. 저희 자료는 발송할 수가 없고 예전 말씀. 심장이 관계자분도 있어요. 이거 아까 한전 표현님 하셨거든요. 아니 이거 말고 이거 말씀하시는 거예요? 한 장짜리 말씀하시는
한 장짜리.
네.
누구
어느 집
명패가 낮에는
전화해 볼게요.
네, 이거부터 저희 결과 보고 쓰려고 라포트
라포톱은 저기 유튜브 있거든요. 저기 앞에. 네, 저기 바로 오른쪽에 저거 라포톱 있는데.
거기에서 바로 하면 되나?
네, 발표할 때는요. 저기 앞에 제가 포인터를 드려요. 네, 그걸로.
나 사진도 찍어야 돼. 이거 바로 찍어.
포인터는 연사자분이 원래 쓰시는 거예요.
그래서 따라왔잖아.
여기 강남 앞에 있는 컴퓨터 말씀하시는
네, 저기 바로 오른쪽에 보이시죠?
영상
저 유튜브, 저 검은색 저기
원장님 말씀 끝나시면
그러니까 뭐
동영상 요청하시면
무선 인터넷 됩니다.
저희 자료는 언제쯤
그 50장 현대. 네, 지금 전화해 볼게요.
자소 배치요? 예, 배치 어떻게 하실 건지. 아, 지금 이름표. 명패 원장님 선까지만 하라고 하셨는데 여기가 원장님 선까지 해주시더라고요. 역할 참가자분들 명패는 어느 분이 어디에 해주시는지 배치는 이거는 배치는 따로 정보. 그럼 저희가 하는 거예요?
아, 저희가 원래 보통 사회자 왼쪽으로 이렇게 중요한 순서를 오른쪽으로 하고 순서 그 프로그램 따라서 프로그램 따라서
담당자분이랑 얘기해서.
뭐세요?
빨리 그렇게 교과서에 얘기해야 것 같은데. 발표자 토론자는 먼저 앞쪽으로 주시고요. 목사님들은 그냥 동그랗게 그냥 알아서 해주시는 거예요. 기억니은 이거만
이렇게 깎이는 거? 아, 제가 배치할게요. 네. 원래 조금 영패 지금 잘 모르겠어요. 부족할 수도 있어요. 누나 이거 다 빼는 거야? 이거 빼. 아, 잠시만요. 이상덕 씨는 되게 정말 많이 걸렸는데? 한 4개 정도.